So I see a whole lot of misinformation about how to do this. There are probably a bunch of ways to do it. I've not had success with all of them. This is the one I've had the most success with. Take your brand new water pump. There's a couple things you have to know. This surface has to be clean no matter what. I know that's like kind of common sense, but I usually take some red Scotch Brite and I scrub the whole thing. Brand new, brand new mating surface. It doesn't matter. I still do this. Nice brake cleaner and rag. Wipe the whole thing down. Hey, to be kind of quiet, I'm doing this at work. Now, it doesn't matter really what you use as an adhesive. This is what I typically use. Depends on the part though. Sometimes this isn't right for the application. Sometimes spray tack is better. But I find that this works pretty well because of how it dries, I guess. And you'll see, I don't put a lot. Now around the elongated holes, I put it all the way around. And this stuff does dry fairly quickly. But if you can see how little I'm putting on, like it's just the faintest smear of it. You take the gaskets and you lay it on. Now, with this stuff, you kind of can't just lay it on. You have to lay it on, then kind of peel it up a little bit, then stick it back down. And what I like to do to make sure the gasket is centered is take the bolts and put them in the holes that aren't elongated. The slider holes, if you would call them. And then I just seat the gasket. And you wait for a little bit. Alright, now the gasket is tacked, so I usually take these bolts back out. They're just there to make sure the gasket's lined up, because the way you put this thing on, if your gasket isn't lined up, you're just going to fight with it and it's always going to leak. So once the gasket is tacked down nice, there's a reason I put it all the way around the elongated holes. It's because you're going to have to cut the excess gasket away from these holes. Because basically what happens is when you go to put your studs in, it will move the gasket. There's enough gasket to do that, but you just end up fighting this thing. And it'll seal, but it'll leak or seep or whatever. And with these G&B pumps, like, because this is kind of all you can get at this point, they come with super shitty gaskets. So you kind of have to be really picky about how you do this. Also, pro tip, install your studs first and it'll stand up. So I'm just going to take a razor blade and just cut the inside of that as far as it'll go, and then just notch it off. Now, well, it's not the prettiest cut. You can see how much gasket was hiding the hole. I mean, fighting that is just a fool's errand. So I'm going to cut the other one. Then I just go around the holes with a pick to flush it up. It doesn't have to be super pretty. So now what I'll do is depends on who you are. A lot of times I'll rub a little bit of Vaseline on the top surface of this. But my surface on the bottom of the head is super clean, so I'm just going to go back to this little gasket seal here again. Dab a little into the hole. You really don't need hardly any here. This thing will stay put. And I just drop the seal in. Then I go ahead and turn it. And this will, if you're lucky, this will stop it from rolling. It shouldn't roll. That's what the either petroleum jelly or whatever sort of non-rubber attacking lubricant you want to use. Silicone works, but I typically just use Vaseline. I mean, they put entire rotary engines together with the shit, so it shouldn't be a problem. And up to this point, it's never been a problem. And I've done probably 500 of these. Other important steps, I guess when I go to the car, I'll show you. You really, the surface of your water pump, not your water pump, your water pipe thing goes in here. You really want to clean that because it's usually pretty rusty because there's dissimilar metals. You know, the pipe is steel, the pump is aluminum, and that it rusts on the inside. I've seen them corroded in there so bad I've had to cut the pumps. So I usually go in those with some Scotch-Brite, clean them with brake clean. Then I lube the inside of the O-ring, put the O-ring on the water pipe, then lube the outside of the O-ring, lube the inside of this hole. Then I use the bolt to pull it together. That's the first thing you do when you go to install. You gotta make sure your pump is on the studs already, but I'll explain all that when I go to do it. As you can tell, there's probably not really a super great way to film this, but I'm just going to show the process real quick. This is the water pipe, and this one is actually in really bad shape. Okay, I got more Scotch-Brite. So I just grab it and scrub it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it really needs to be done. Good old brake clean. Take our O-ring, I'm just going to drown it in silicone. Then just slide it on the pipe. Now, I've seen these corrode completely off and cause a leak regardless. So that's nice. Then I take some and just spray it in the hole. Oh boy. Spray it in the hole and rub it around. Alright. Figure out your orientation, find your studs on the block, slide it in, and the water pump will just go on real easy. It'll just sit there unless it falls off, which it might. Find your bolt and nut. Reach through the pump. Thread it a little bit. Hey, see, this pipe has got a big notch in it. which is pretty problematic. Actually, no, I skipped a step. Let's go ahead and make this a little easier. Take your nuts and washers. It's a little easier without silicone covered gloves. You just put them on a couple threads. That way you're not trying to fight the water pump the entire time. Alright, go ahead and get dirty. Like I said, just a few turns and you'll be fine. Wish there was a better angle, but I can't. Torque to spec. Now, that's pretty important because if you don't do that first, it's just going to force the water pump off the block when you go to do this. Alright. Let me try to get a different angle on this. Maybe you can see it better. Okay. This should be a little better. Alright, you see how the water pump is being opposed pretty readily by that whole pipe? That's kind of why they give you the studs and not just bolts. So what I like to do, and now I've already lubed this O-ring, I like to force it back and then run my nuts up a little bit more to pull the water pump back a little bit. But you can't tighten them too much because you still have to do the lifting portion of this situation, or you'll never get your other bolts to thread. It's still loose. All right. Now this is the part that takes a little bit of not even finesse. It's mostly just upper body strength and being able to hold in weird positions. You know, this is not my favorite part of this job. So basically, you got to find your best angle, which I can't. Hopefully I can accurately represent. You have to grab the water pump on one side, put a bolt in the hole, and you have to lift on the pump and try to thread the bolt. But at the same time, you're trying to lift directly up and squish the seal. Like I said, it's probably going to take a couple tries. Couple angle changes. See, and sometimes they're way harder than others, and they'll wear you out pretty quick. Now, for those of you that don't do this every day, probably don't do what I'm about to do. I'm really going to have to crank on it. And if you find that one hole doesn't work, try another. The bottom ones typically aren't the easiest ones to get to, so I usually don't use those. But I'm going to try right now. Okay, that one's in. Now the rest of them should just pop in, no problem. In theory. So I got two of them in. This one's the kind of frustrating one. I know they made a tool where you can use a ratchet strap or all kinds of stuff, but I find that I have the most success doing it this way. This is just kind of when I snug everything up a little bit. I stop from that point and I go grab a different thing. The torque spec for these is something really low, and there's a lot of conjecture and all kinds of stuff out there saying what works and what doesn't. And I find that if I use a torque wrench on these, they like to break. And that's a 1/4 inch, inch-pound torque wrench. So I've got a pretty good feel for this at this point. So I just use this 1/4 inch ratchet here, go around and tighten everything. Sorry about the hands, dudes and ladies. I mean, and it's a process, and there's no real pattern. Well, there might be, actually. But I'll usually go around regular, and then I'll go top to bottom and cross to cross. These G&B pumps, they have this little rib at the bottom that disallows you from getting a socket on here all the way. I don't know why they did that. So that's something to take into account. So now it's all torqued down, the water pump is properly in place. Take my light, take a peek. You can see right here at the block, if you look there and you've got a really nice flat looking surface, you're all good to go. If you cleaned it well, it's not going to leak. So I mean, from this point, like, I didn't show you taking it apart because it's not really all that difficult, but those are some of the little tricks that you can do